Hello everyone, my name is Yukina Takanashi, or at least that is an alias I use for privacy reasons. Some of you may already know me from the Toji no Miko fanfics that I write. Normally before I write a fanfiction, I like making a chart to clearly understand the relationships between the characters I use. In this video, I'm going to discuss those relationships, along with the family tree of my two most popular Toji no Miko fanfics, Sparked and its sequel, Shattered Reflection. However, I'm not going to go through all the events that happen in both fanfics, but rather make two separate videos on each fanfiction. One video for Sparked, and one for Shattered Reflection. In this video, I'm going to be giving a brief summary of Sparked, which takes place after episode 24, without taking into account the 5th arc of the Toji no Miko game. And spoiler alert, if you haven't yet read Sparked or Shattered Reflection, and do not want any spoilers, then I highly advise you to click away now. Okay, let's look at the chart. Before Sparked begins, a major event occurs where Tagitsahime returns from the Netherworld for revenge. And in order to achieve that, one of the first things she does is she convinces Hiyori to have sex with her in order to gain a child. Hiyori, of course, is angry and refuses, but eventually lets Tagitsahime rape her in order to protect Kanami. Tagitsahime also merges Ichikishima into Hiyori's body to ensure their child is not born from a full human. Hiyori is left impregnated, and 9 months later, her child is born, whom she names Kagari, after her mother. And this is where Sparked begins. After the birth of Kagari, Hiyori lets herself be confined in Takirihime's former containment chamber with Kagari under Yukari's orders, so as to protect her child from Tagitsahime, but also because Hiyori is now half Aradama. Remember, Hiyori once again has Ichikishima Hime's powers and is therefore very dangerous, as she cannot control them with ease. Hiyori's friends are obviously very concerned of her, but eventually given under the promise that they can still visit her. During her time of imprisonment, Hiyori meets a woman named Konoka, the ambassador of the Origami family, and also her long-lost aunt. This makes Konoka Hiyori's aunt, and her niece. We learn that Konoka is also half Aradama, as the Hiragi family possesses the power to merge with them. Konoka trains Hiyori and helps her control her powers better. But then something terrible happens. After being convinced to join a festival with her friends, Hiyori accidentally loses control of her powers and kills a man. This obviously horrifies her, and she runs back to her cell. However, it turns out that Konoka is not really the kind, helpful aunt as she appears, but rather a deceitful woman trying to turn Hiyori into a monster. Konoka makes Hiyori angry, and subsequently, Hiyori loses control of her powers, harming Mai. Hiyori flees the city with Kagari and into the wilderness of the mountains, where she sets up her lair in an abandoned Shinto shrine. And it is here that she is discovered by Tagitsahime, who has kidnapped the Origami sisters and is now holding them prisoner in the shrine. Realizing that as long as she remains half Aradama, no one is safe, Hiyori conjures up a strong storm with her powers around her mountain and the surrounding area to prevent anyone from reaching her lair. Konoka uses the kidnapping of the Origami sisters to her advantage by placing the blame on Hiyori, publicly announcing it across the nation on live TV. This angers the public, and Kanami and her friends decide to track down Hiyori to warn her and convince her to come back with them. But Hiyori kicks them out of her lair, and all is in vain. For exactly 1 month and 5 days, Hiyori, being inconsolable, steals Noro for Tagitsahime, even killing those who dare to stop her. She even eventually accepts Tagitsahime as her lover, and they end up having sex. Again. But what reminds Hiyori of her true love for Konami is when they share their first kiss, after Konami catches Hiyori in the middle of one of her Noro thefts. But then, Konoka discovers the location of Hiyori's lair and sends troops of Tojis, police officers, and soldiers from the Special Ritual Rod Squad. Hiyori is tortured and Konami arrested after she tried to interfere. Taketsihime manages to scare off the intruders, and they flee in terror, bringing Konami back with them. Konoka takes Chidori from Konami and gives it to Taketsihime, who shows it to Hiyori, pretending that Konami has been executed for treason. This, of course, makes Hiyori heartbroken, and she loses control of her powers again, allowing Taketsihime to inject her with all the Noro that Hiyori had stolen. As a result, Hiyori becomes an Aradama princess, mad with revenge, and takes Chidori and Kogurasamaru, fusing them together to create a whole new weapon, a double-bladed okatana called Shitsuren, or Broken Heart in Japanese. Taketsihime is now very scared, as he realizes Hiyori is now more dangerous than she thought. Taketsihime then flees with Kagari to protect their child from Hiyori. Meanwhile, Konami's friends manage to release her from prison and send her off to Ellen's home in America with Richard Friedman in his submarine. Konami's friends then gather together secretly at the Special Sword Administration Bureau with their other friends, the Akabane Sword Team, Maki and Suzuka, Director Manawa, and even President Takatsu, who we learn is Sayaka's adopted mother. Together, they have restored Mokusa back into operation, only this time to overthrow Konoka. Back at Hiyori's lair, she has freed Yukari and Akane and helped them return back to Kamakura on her Aradama dragon, under the stern warning that they do not send help to her. Yukari and Akane are informed of everything that has happened in their absence, and as a result, they fire Konoka. But Konoka is far from over with getting her revenge and goes to the mountains. She manages to find Taketsihime, mortally wounding her and kidnapping Kagari. Konoka then starts heading towards Hiyori's lair. Meanwhile, Konami, having heard of the Origami sisters' return, frantically goes back to Japan. She finds the wounded Taketsihime, begging her for help to save Hiyori and Kagari. Taketsihime, actually being concerned for her daughter, agrees, but unfortunately is too injured to do so. It is here that a big plot twist occurs, and that is when Konami merges with Taketsihime. You might be thinking, well, hang on, Yukina, only the Origami and Hiragi families can merge with Aradama. I'll explain that later on in the video, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Konoka storms into Hiyori's lair, and the two duel. Hiyori actually wins the fight, but lets Konoka go, an unusual act of mercy, but not done on a whim. Rather, Hiyori, having accepted herself as a monster, realizes that she and Konoka are not that different, and grants Konoka the second chance she was never given. At last, Konami finds Hiyori, and it seems that everything has finally ended on a good note. But once again, something terrible happens. Konoka uses Shitsuren, Hiyori's powerful weapon, to stab Hiyori from behind, mortally wounding her. But her victory doesn't last long either, as Konami, with Taketsuhime's powers and Okatanas, kills Konoka, dissolving her into Noro. Absolutely torn up and heartbroken, Konami gives Hiyori one last kiss goodbye, but manages to revive her, as through that action, Taketsuhime merged herself into Hiyori. But the amount of power Hiyori has in herself is too much, and to her horror, an entirely new Aradama being breaks out of her, Hiyori-hime, her new alter ego. Hiyori-hime takes Shitsuren, Hiyori's powers, and even Kagari. Using her Aradama powers, Hiyori-hime resurrects Konoka, and this is where Sparked ends. Before I end the video, I'll now explain about how Kanami was able to merge with Tagizahime. In the last chapter of Sparked, Akane explains that Kanami and Hiyori are connected in more ways than they think, and here's where we get a flashback. When Kanami and Hiyori's mothers, Minato and Kagari, were Tojis, Minato was mortally wounded. How she got wounded is a mystery until the sequel, but I won't reveal that yet. Kagari, wanting to save Minato, donates her blood to her, and therefore some of her Hiragi powers with it. And this is how Minato, and later on Kanami, were able to retain Hiragi merging powers. That is the end of Sparked. Shattered Reflection, as I mentioned, is the sequel, and I will be releasing a video sometime explaining that fanfiction too. If you are interested in reading Sparked or any of my fanfictions in general, I have put the links in the description. That's all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.